Corpse Party. We've only just begun. There's a word for what we're gonna have, and that word is
blood.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
Well, that got grim awfully quick.
Welcome to Halloween.
Halloween, which we cannot help but say in the Brooklyn Nine-Nine way.
Yeah, gotta say it like
Halloween.
Captain Holt. Halloween week.
Now, to clarify, here in Australia, we don't really do much for Halloween. You might see the occasional child attempting to scavenge candy out of strangers' houses. It doesn't happen very often here.
Yeah. They're pretty lazy. All they do is throw on a cape and think that they deserve free food. So if you want, lollies from us, you better cosplay good, kid, or you get nothing. Nothing. Welcome to the Gaming Lovers episode 28. I am Jem.
I'm Brendo.
And we are currently
Spooky.
over... What?
We're not spooky?
We are in Japan, so you can catch up on all our adventures as they're happening, as we are completely geeking out in Akihabara, and as we see all this incredible sites. We're going to be posting updates on our social media, and you can find the links at thegaminglovers.com.
Now, over in Japan, they celebrate Halloween a little bit differently because they like to keep things done to a schedule.
Yes.
So they celebrate Halloween the Saturday before?
Yep. Well, that's when they have their official parties and festivals because they have Sundays off, and that's pretty much the only day off they have during the week. Even school is a 6-day week.
Yay.
Lucky them. So Saturday nights is kind of their party night. So they do big parades. They have zombie walks, which I think is pretty cool. I think in Osaka they have everyone comes in their full zombie getup or whatever horror costume that they have and have a big party in the streets. That's Saturday before Halloween. So if it falls on the Saturday, that works out well for them. But otherwise, it's always the one right beforehand. So as we are talking about this...
So we'd like to go to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios and get to live some of this horror experience?
Well, at those studios and at Disney World as well, they tend to go for a whole month.
Oh, yes.
So they've been Halloweening it up for a while now.
Halloween!
But yeah, so they've technically, as this podcast drops, they've already had their official celebrations, but Halloween is still technically a little sleep away. So this whole episode we're just celebrating the spookiness and reflecting on games that Scary-fied?
Scary-fied.
It's a new word.
It's terrifying and scary. I like it. Scary-fied.
Yep. So we have, I think, the top 13 scariest games. Again, no gaming goals until we officially get back down under. Because we are quite busy with our travels. So straight into the topic.
I love it.
Well, being the spooky season, there's no better time to play horror games than when it's Halloween. Like we said, in Australia, we don't get much excitement out of Halloween. It's not really done here. I might see the occasional witch standing on a train platform as I bring my train in. And some suburbs, that's actually a year-round thing.
I was going to say, you see that pretty much every week. That's not Halloween linked.
But over the years, myself and the Falcon in particular, for whatever reason, we love playing horror games together. I think the tension brings out more nervous laughter, more silly jokes and memories of when we muck up and get horribly impaled or dismembered by some horrible beastie. So it's always been one of my favourite genres to play.
Well, they do say that people that survive, horrific circumstances together grow closer over that bonded experience. So who knew that just simulating that was enough?
So that means that you and I can grow stronger together if we both play Sonic Boom co-op?
That would be a horror game, wouldn't it?
I was very tempted to make this list a top 10 scary games that aren't actually horror games, but I was worried that I would just be negative the entire podcast. And we are the gaming lovers, after all. We try to keep things positive. I'm going to be taking my lovely wife's hand and guiding her through 13 top-notch horror games.
Can I just say, while we're in Japan, there is zero chance of you taking me through one of those silly haunted houses that they do over there. Because seriously, the Japanese haunted houses, they are not tame. They are next level scary. So
It'd be even scarier because you wouldn't know what the monsters, crazy axe murderers, are actually saying to you. They could just be directing you to the bathroom, and they're going, hello, and you're like,
wakarimasen.
I got fear. Fear, unfortunately, did not make the list.
Oh, okay.
Fear is a good game.
Good game. All right, so with your list,
just to
explain how
clarify-
you're breaking this down.
Well, like I said, I'll be doing most of the heavy lifting on this podcast.
Yeah.
You not a fan of the spooks?
No. I will give colour commentary. How about that?
All right, what are your thoughts on zombies, just quickly?
I'm not a big fan of them, to be honest.
Monsters?
Depends on the monsters. I think I can separate myself a little more from monsters than I can with zombies. It's anything too humanoid. I don't know, for some reason unsettles me more than just monsters.
What about insane humans?
They say that's bad too, because that's too grounded in reality.
Okay, good. Just checking.
You know,
Okay.
like anything that's demonic, where it's like people being possessed, like things like that hit closer to home for me than things that are just, what is it? Dark Souls, for example, where you've got a lot of creatures that are just grotesque and huge and
Big, ugly beasts.
yeah. I mean, they're gross and stuff, but they're not as scary to me. I guess they don't play on my mind like other stuff does. So, yeah, let's do this. We're just talking about games and I'm already sweating. What is wrong?
Now, I had a feeling this might happen. You have no intention of playing any of these games.
No.
I'm not one for sharing spoilers and definitely not one for receiving spoilers, so we're going to keep things rather
Generic?
generic for
Okay.
our discussions. But I will explain what captured them. I've tried to make a list of games that not only are good games, like physically, mechanically good games, but also may have made me require brown underpants. Just saying. Just saying.
Oh, dear.
Now, because it's spooky, Halloween, we have decided to do 13 games for horror.
Which is your favourite number?
It is, and that is only because, it's not because it's unlucky for some, it's simply because if you write the numbers 1 and 3 close enough together, you end up writing a B, with which my name starts.
Yes.
Without it, I'd be Hyperendo.
Brendo. I love it. That's your new nickname.
But out of the 13 games, I'm going
Rendo.
to give 10, in my top 10 list of games that I've played, horror games, and then the other 3 are games that I haven't quite gotten to, but definitely will be playing, potentially by the time the year ends.
All right, let's do this, Rendo.
Oh my goodness. No, I shouldn't have done this. Now, when Slender hit the big time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Slender, just a little indie game that somebody made, looks like in their basement, about first person. There's a creature, you can't look at him or you die, and he can teleport, so you never know where he actually is.
Mm-hmm.
I played that and got a little apprehensive and scared. It was kind of exciting, kind of a fun way to spend an hour or two, but really, it was just a one-hit wonder for me. Number 10 on my list is a game that scared the pants off me when I played it immediately following Slender, because I thought I was invincible, because Slender had simply made me think that I could handle anything. And that is Amnesia: The Dark Descent. And if anyone has played this, they're probably nodding along as I say that name. Amnesia was one of the very first horror games where you could not fight back. I grew up primarily PlayStation 1, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, those sort of games, where you can, if you have limited ammo, but you can eliminate creatures. Something's following you and it's going to kill you, you can fight back. No problem. Amnesia is a first-person game. You have a castle to explore. I'll give you the synopsis because I decided I want to get your opinion on what you think of this setting.
Okay.
The game features a protagonist named Daniel, exploring a dark and foreboding castle, while trying to maintain his sanity by avoiding monsters and other terrifying obstructions.
Right. And does he voluntarily go into this castle?
believe he just wakes up in the castle.
Okay, so he didn't do it by choice. So at
Don't
least
blame Daniel.
there's a point in his favour, because the thing that really irks me about a lot of these tropes is that they could be so easily avoided. So, okay, so he wakes up in a castle and has to avoid dangers and has no way of fighting back.
Yes. Now, this is a game that builds up the tension. You don't actually see any creatures for probably your first half an hour of gameplay. You're just exploring, trying to get a feel for the things. It has, instead of just pushing a button to open or close a door, you actually have to hold a button and move it slowly if you want to be sneaky and have a little peeky. Or you can burst it open. Now, if you're being chased by something, we get the unfortunate experience that we've all done at the local pizza shop, is that you don't know whether a door is a push or a pull. So you're being chased, you run up, you're trying to open the door, it's not opening, you freak out because something's right on your tail, and sure enough, it was a push door, not a pull.
But if you bumped into the door, surely that momentum of you bumping into it would push it forward.
It was just an example.
Okay.
The game's scary, you're not thinking rationally, things happen.
Mm-hmm. Isn't adrenaline, though, supposed to help you, like, slow time in a way so you can make choices in, like, split seconds?
Well, unfortunately for Daniel, his sanity is not exactly intact. The longer you spend outside of light, the longer you spend in the same area as a creature in this castle, your sanity goes down and you may start seeing visual hallucinations.
Lovely.
Which
a
can make it
delightful
very
place.
difficult.
I wonder what kind of rating it gets on Airbnb.
Now, if you put yourself in the light, you can obviously restore that sanity. Not only are you trying to juggle your health and your sanity meters, but if you're standing in the light, obviously you're much easier to see.
Yes.
So we have some basic puzzles, we have some spooky exploration, and some hideous-looking creatures that you do not want to run into in the dark corridors.
It's an interesting parallel, though, that metaphor of being in the light helps keep your sanity.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of true. They say that if you're struggling with depression, that being outdoors and in the sunlight helps clear your mind and rejuvenates you, not just physically, but helps mentally with your health. So, anyway, probably not something they were thinking of when they were making this game, but yeah.
Well, look, that's if you are having a spooky time, go stand in some sun. Maybe that'll help, or a candle.
I think that's one thing that helps, like, if you are playing a scary game and you're not sure if you're going to be able to handle it, like, play it during the middle of the day when there's lots of daylight. You're not freaking out.
Absolute garbage.
No, you wouldn't do that. You like pure darkness.
Horror games are supposed to be experienced with surround sound headphones, a dark, quiet room, and controller vibrations on, please.
So that way I can burst in on you and make you wet your pants.
Which you have, well, not the wet the pants bit, but you have bursted on me and made me almost die of a heart attack. Amnesia is available on the PS4 as well. The Amnesia Collection, which includes its sequel, A Machine for Pigs. Was that your pig sound?
No, it was me saying what in a really high-pitched voice.
There's giant pig-headed men that are also hunting you in that one. I have not played it, and I have not played Amnesia since I first played through it, and that was enough for me, and that was many years ago. So
you put it down. Did you not finish it?
No, I beat it. If I'm a bit rusty on the details, I'm just saying it's been a fair few years, and I considered playing through it again on the PS4 in the lead up to this Halloween, but decided against it for whatever reason. I'm not, because I'm a chicken. That's number 10 on my list. What are your thoughts? Would you play it?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Number 9, it's a corpse party.
I'm trying to think of the second song, the second melody.
Hey, did you say it's a corpse party? Number 9 on my list is a game called Corpse Party.
Hey, have you heard it's Corpse Party?
Oh my gosh.
We're a bit dead at the Corpse Party.
That's enough of that before we get into copyright and or legal and or moral issues.
Hey, if it's a parody, then I can use it. It's okay.
Corpse Party. What are your first thoughts when you hear Corpse Party? What does it bring to mind?
Corpse Party.
No.
We've only just
They've already endured that once, if not twice.
It makes me think of the Mexican Day of the Dead.
Uh-huh. Okay, nice.
And Community, when Annie throws the party, and just seeing her dance in her skeleton costume.
Well, that is not, unfortunately, what the Corpse Party is. This is
See,
the
I
game.
play that.
This is the game that I've played most recently because I only just finished it before we jetted off to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it probably about 2 years ago and didn't have the courage to play it, to be honest. There's been some issues. I'll cover those later. But tell me about this corpse party, you say?
Corpse
No,
party.
if you do that one more time, I will kick you out and I'll do this podcast by myself.
Okay. Corpse. Bye.
Keep this up and the police will come and investigate a corpse party. No, that was not actually a threat against my wife recorded. Definitely not evidence to be used against me.
I think it is.
It was a parody. You can't hold it against me.
Don't believe a word he says.
You're going to get me jailed or worse.
Or worse.
Well, vigilantes. They'll make me a corpse party.
We don't live in Starling City. You're okay.
Okay, listen here. The plot of the Party of Corpses.
Yep.
There's a series of games, right? The first one concerns a group of Japanese high school students who, after celebrating their school's culture festival, are telling ghost stories when a sudden earthquake transports them to a dilapidated schoolhouse in an alternate dimension that is haunted by the ghosts of people who have been trapped there.
And then Matt Hardy appears.
No dilapidated things for him. Now, this game plays, it's basically almost a visual novel, but it's viewed top-down, almost like the old-school Pokemon games, built potentially in one of those RPG makers that you can get. Now, the fact that most of the games on my list might be first-person, they might be third-person, but you've got, most of the time, cutting-edge graphics at the time.
Yep.
Lighting systems, top-notch spookiness, surround sound, perfect. This game is so low-res, so basic in its game design that you think, okay, how on earth can this even be scary? Because it's not like something's going to jump out of the corner at me. I'm looking down. I'm basically looking down at the corridor. Nothing can touch me here. I'm safe as the player. I'm so far removed from the situation. What I doubted was how tense simply walking down a corridor is when you can't directly see from your character's line of sight. Because you're looking down on the corridor, you can't see what the character sees, so you don't know what you're walking towards.
Yeah.
That puts you on edge. And secondly, the sound design, the writing, and the music all work together to elevate your stress levels. And let me tell you something. There are dead ends in this game. Bad ends, just like most visual novels you play. If you make a wrong choice, go somewhere with the wrong item, so on and so forth, your story will end in a violent way. And one of which still haunts me, and it was with a perfectly black screen with barely any text on the screen at all. Because it was all sounds. My poor character was blinded and had something terrible happen to them, and I could just hear what was happening, and my imagination filled in the gaps, and it's bad.
I think that's an art that has kind of slowly been lost, both in video games but also like movies and things where...
Doing more with less.
Absolutely. Leaving it to people's imagination sometimes is way more powerful than being really graphic. So I prefer it when they can leave stuff to my imagination is far worse. So let it do its thing. Less is more and all that. But one trick that I do when I'm freaked out about stuff, I will turn the volume down or off and then I can handle it. Because sound is such a huge part of tense scenes in anything.
Agreed.
And as soon as you cut that out, it is so much easier to watch what you're watching. But as soon as you add tense music, you could turn something that's seemingly very pleasant, visually speaking, into a really disturbing or, heart-racing moment if you have certain music playing. And it's, it's done very deliberately to manipulate you and get your heartbeat going faster, and so that you start, getting sweaty hands.
All the music will stop, and then there'll be a fake scare, and then you get your sense of security, and then the real scare will hit.
Yep.
And it doesn't even have to be horror movies for that. Even just your standard Hollywood blockbuster has moments like that.
Yep, and thrillers.
So, Corpse Party. Any interest?
No. Not unless it's like Coco.
Coco?
You know, because it's like they're all dead, but they're singing.
It's
and
not a Mexican game, it's Japanese.
But see, that would just be so much more fun.
A more fun corpse party.
Yes. Corpse party.
No. Let's move on to number 8 before you get slapped.
I think you came close to slapping me before you kept shoving your hand in my mouth.
Well, the longer I spend on these games, the more insane I become, because that's how these work in these games.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at BrendoGem. That's BrendoJem.
Number 8 on my list of spooky games. Siren Blood Curse. What's your first thoughts when you hear Siren Blood Curse?
Yay!
What's wrong with you?
Gee, I wonder.
You don't seem to be enjoying this procedure.
No.
Well, before you cast judgment on Siren Blood Curse, it features a cast of interconnected characters, all of whom are caught up in the unnatural forces surrounding Hanuta Mountain. Most of the early characters belong to a film crew shooting a documentary on the legendary Hanuta village, a mysterious Japanese mountain village that is said to have disappeared many years ago. The film crew accidentally interrupt a ritual, and suddenly the entire population of the village seem to be zombie men. However, they still keep doing whatever job they were doing. So you might have zombies farming the ground, or...
They're committed to their work, those
They-
Japanese,
they-
even when they're zombies.
That's it. They have a work ethic that we can all aspire to.
Oh, wow.
Now, what makes this game interesting is it's like a retelling of the first Forbidden Siren game. There was Forbidden Siren 1 and 2. 1 was especially hilarious because it had a British voice dub for the Australian territory, and everyone looks Japanese, like super Japanese, and they're speaking like, "Oh no, what are we going to do?" It's just like, I can't take this horror game seriously. This is not working for me at all. The main gimmick in Siren, or Forbidden Siren, depending on your version, I suppose, is that you can sight jack the enemy. Now, if you imagine using an aerial on a TV to try and tune in the signal that's desperately evading you, imagine doing that with your brain, and then you can look through the enemy's eyes.
Weird.
Tune it in, and then you can see their patrol routes, you can see what sort of weapon they have, and then you play each chapter as a different character. Now, when myself and the Falcon played through this, we added a little extra steaks to the mix.
Steaks are delicious.
Not talking about meat steaks. You are having awful trouble keeping up here. There is a brand of jelly bean called Bean Boozled, of which there are 2 flavours that look identical, of each colour. One will be a nice flavour, like fairy floss, and the other one will be a stinky socks or something similar. There is lovely apple, and then the other colour, they're the same colour, but the other flavour is like boogers or something. And there are some absolutely horrific flavours in the Bean Boozled mix. Canned dog food,
Vomit.
skunk smell. So we made it that we alternated each chapter, and if you died while you were playing, you had to eat a bean. And let me tell you, if you think there's tension when you're playing a horror game, you ain't known tension till you've had a potential vomit-flavoured snack as your penalty for dying.
Lovely. And is it a game that you died in a lot?
I died more than the Falcon did. We kept a tally, and it was definitely not in my favour. So any interest in playing Siren Blood Curse?
No.
No? Okay, shall we move on to number 7?
Yes.
Have you had enough with the Japanese ghost stories?
Well, I'm guessing that there's way more, because
there
they
is way
do scary stuff very well.
There is way more. Let's move on to number 7, a game series. I tried to only pick one game from each series, and for me, very few horror games got me to the point where I did not want to play anymore. Very few. Project Zero was definitely one of them. Also known as Fatal Frame in other territories. We get Project Zero because apparently Fatal Frame is too grisly for Australians to listen to. I'm not sure of the reason. Again, I'm used to dealing with zombies or monsters or humans or things that I can shoot, things that I can run away from and lock a door and get on the other side and I'm safe.
Well, to be fair, you're technically shooting them, just not with a gun.
Yes, you are running away from ghosts in Project Zero, and you are armed with a camera. Now, the problem with ghosts is that normally in a survival horror game, you're panicked, you get your weapon, you back into a corner, and then nothing can come behind you. You're standing with your back at the corner, can't get sneak attacked.
You think hiding in this room is gonna keep you safe?
Ghosts can't go through doors, stupid. They're not fire.
Ghosts can go through walls.
Mm-hmm.
You are vulnerable from every position.
From the ceiling, from the floor.
100% correct. Now, Project Zero took me a lot of guts to actually get through the first time, and I loved horror games, so of course I bought the second one. The second one, I am so upset to say, but I never actually beat it because it scared me too much.
Wow.
Now, when the third one came out, I bought it launch day
Did you play it?
in 2007.
Have you played it?
I finally beat it on my 4 in February 2 years ago. It was my biggest black mark on my backlog because I had bought it launch day full price and
then
did not
had
play
played-
it for like 9 years. And I refused to allow it to reach 10. So I beat Project Zero 3. I didn't find that as scary as I maybe hyped it up in my mind. And that's the problem. Sometimes I overthink things when it comes to horror games. I'm like, oh, it sounds like it'll be so much fun. And then I think about actually playing it and I'm like, oh, no, it'll make me nervous. Oh, can I handle this?
Mm-hmm.
But Project Zero 2, have a listen to this. Fatal Frame 2. It's called Crimson Butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
The story follows twin sisters Mio and Mayu as they explore an abandoned village and experience encounters with the paranormal. Doesn't that sound like a Ghibli film? Oh, we're going for a lovely little experience with the paranormal.
Spirited Away was pretty creepy.
Their lives quickly become threatened when the village spirits begin to possess the pair and target them as sacrifices for an ancient ritual.
Of course.
I don't always like playing games where children are suffering, but I'm seeing a trend.
Or you think of one of your favourite movies, Japanese movies, Battle Royale.
Mm-hmm.
That's kids killing each other.
Well, you make me sound so...
Then one of your favourite game series, Danganronpa,
Okay.
kids killing each other.
Okay, let me make it clear. I work in youth ministry. I need to vent occasionally at the frustrations.
You better not snap and then turn into Monokuma. I gotta say though, Project Zero, aka Fatal Frame, would make a pretty scary VR game.
Indeed it would. The fourth game in the series was on the Wii U.
Mm-hmm.
And you use the gamepad
As
to
your
move
camera.
the camera around.
That's
and
clever.
you take photos. Now, that also gives the claustrophobia of everything feels like it's actually around you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the exact idea that we suggested for Pokemon Snap.
Yes, I was
That would have been
just
the
about to say,
perfect
see, that would have
device.
worked. Poor Pokemon Snap.
You will probably see Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly on a lot of top 10 lists because it is darn spooky. There's just something about these ghosts. The level design, you're in a village, ghosts are everywhere, and it is incredibly difficult to avoid them at times.
Mm-hmm.
You can't shoot a ghost.
Unless you have like a special Ghostbusters gun. Maybe you need more of a vacuum?
Well, that's how they did it. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Ghostbusters! So maybe that's what they should have just called Ghostbusters. Instead of going exploring a mountain by themselves. Alone.
Maybe they didn't have the number. Or maybe it's just because, they're only based in the States. Wouldn't get there in time.
Now, for number 6, I have always been very torn on the Resident Evil progression of the series. I was always a fan of the classic style. The first group of Resident Evil games, I loved that style at the time, and I was very resistant to change. We've talked in previous podcasts about certain series changing gears and moving on in different directions to prevent being stale.
Mm-hmm.
Resident Evil had definitely gotten stale, but I still loved my stale Resident Evil. Resident Evil 4, when that launched, changed completely. The camera followed Leon around on his shoulder, third person, completely different gameplay. I didn't like it at all at the time. It was a great game, but I found it to be not a good Resident Evil game because I thought, this isn't Resident Evil. I know Resident Evil. I've played Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, Outbreak, File 2. I've played Gun Survivor. I've played Dead Aim. I've played everything.
How dare they change the formula?
How dare they? Resident Evil 4 follows the US government special agent Leon S. Kennedy. Well, he's sent on a mission to rescue Ashley Graham, the US president's daughter, whom a sinister cult has kidnapped. Travelling to a rural area of Spain, Leon fights hordes of violent villagers. Now, the reason why Resident Evil 4 has ended up on this list is for one main reason, and that is every time I hear a whippersnipper or a weed whacker or whatever they're called in other places, or a hedge trimmer, or anything that slightly resembles a chainsaw, my butt starts to clench. Because there is a large fellow, I believe his name is Salvador, potentially.
Dali?
No.
Oh.
Although it could be. He wears a sack on his head and holds a mighty big chainsaw and will pursue you recklessly.
And does then he melt your face and add it to his paintings?
No, he does not paint, except for your blood.
See, that you just thought you've been using that as his paint. It could be his medium. That would be a really interesting plot twist if, like, there was a character that, like, killed people and then used their stuff to make art.
That's called Layers of Fear, and it just missed out on my top 10 list.
But were they a famous artist or was they just a crazy person?
They were a famous artist.
Ooh. Oh, and I thought I had original ideas.
Sorry, nothing's original in this world
I
anymore.
suppose that's true.
Resident Evil 4, I felt so strange because I'd played games where I fought zombies in Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, you shoot zombies. And you also have humans in other games.
And sandwiches.
You know what the difference between a zombie and a human is if you shoot them in the brain? Very little. They stay down. Resident Evil 4, these humans, you peg them in the head with a handgun and they just keep coming because they have a parasite in their head that expands and attacks you. So you actually get penalised for headshots.
Oh.
Now that is counterproductive for any gamer because you have
You're so
basically
used to headshots.
trained yourself to line up that beautiful headshot and then you shoot it and a giant tentacle arm pops out of their head and starts flailing at you.
I was hoping when you said that there was a parasite in their head that it would be like those brain slugs in Futurama. Where they're just like...
So between the change of tactics and trying to outmaneuver a group of like 12 villagers that are all trying to get you in this one little section at once, and then you fight off enough of them and suddenly you hear the whirring of a chainsaw coming in from the distance, and you're in a little shack on the second floor. The only way out's the window or the door you've just barricaded, and then the door gets blasted by the chainsaw. That is tense gameplay.
Oh no, what you gonna do?
Jump out the window or you'll be sliced in two. Resident Evil 4, would you like to play it? You can play it in this generation. It has been remastered twice, I believe.
Yeah, I think I can do without it.
It came out on the GameCube originally, an exclusive, if you believe it or not. Nintendo, disemboweling Leon S. Kennedy. Cheney. We feared Cheney with our lives. Cheney.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side. And you could be featured in the next podcast.
Now we're moving into the top end of my top 5 list, and I highly recommend all of these. These were very difficult to actually establish a pecking order because I have such fond memories of everything in this top 5. Like, it was neck and neck and neck and neck and neck. Number 4 didn't make it because the neck had been cut off, you see, with the chainsaw.
So you have fond memories of being scared witless.
Why do women watch sad movies?
Well, it depends on the reason. There's multiple reasons.
Why would you pick a movie that will make you sad?
Well,
Why
there's-
do you want to experience that emotion?
Well, sometimes it's just more to cover up the fact that you're hormonal. So you can blame it on the movie when really you would cry because you dropped a tissue.
Yeah, well, you like to watch a movie that would make you feel a negative emotion, like sadness. I like to play games that make me feel a negative emotion, like fear. You get the thrill. I never liked thrill rides at amusement parks or anything like that that would make me physically uncomfortable because I thought, I'm going to die here. I'm not going out of an airplane with a parachute. I'm going to die doing that. I'm not going to jump 88 meters off a stupid stadium roof in South Africa because that could kill me.
But it didn't.
It did not. Now, I didn't find any enjoyment in risking my life doing those things, but people like the adrenaline boost. And so, by playing a scary game, you have those tense situations that if they do get too much, you can pause and or turn off the console. Problem's gone. You do get the thrill, the fear, the tension, and then you get the sweet release as you overcome your obstacles.
I guess that's true to an extent. The thing I guess that I don't like about that genre is that things tend to stay with me. I have things that linger that will pop back, especially if I'm in the house alone late at night, and certain images will just pop back in my head at like the worst moments, whether it's from a video game or sometimes from a scary movie. I remember being exposed to some horror movies when I was like a young teenager at a birthday party, and it was not anywhere near my choice to be there watching those, but I was outvoted. Thankfully I'd brought my Game Boy with me, so I went into another room and played that, but I kept coming back in the room every time it went quiet because I thought it must be over. No.
Just as the tension's building up to the big reveal.
To the worst parts of The Exorcist. Yep, that's what I got. So I have all of those moments like ingrained, like burnt into my psyche, and then they'll come back at the worst moments and freak me out all over again. So like that's why like I struggle the most with this genre. Like I don't mind, like I'm not fond of jump scares, but I can still tolerate them to an extent in other games. But I will not go out of my way to play horror games because, you know, the content in them, or especially anything too gory as well, it just stays with me, and I'm like, I don't want that plaguing me at the worst times.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I understand.
that's my-
I know not every movie style, every game style is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm immune to
That's-
seeing chick flicks. Just kidding. I love a good chick flick.
Emphasis on the good.
Yeah. Simon
Which
does.
makes them quite rare, actually. Anyways, I just felt like I needed to explain that.
Oh, there's no criticism, there's no judgment, there's no pressure for you not enjoying the spookies, but we figured it was a good topic to discuss. And by discuss, I mean I ramble on about what I've enjoyed, and you just sit there going, yes, quite. That sounds gross. No, thank you.
Going, no thanks.
I could go into more detail if you'd prefer.
Well, at least I'm not seeing it, but no thank you.
This will be as bad as Corpse Party, and don't you dare sing the song.
You brought it up.
Okay, number 5 on my list. We
Is
are
alive.
sticking with Resident Evil. It is alive because it was a corpse, and now it's alive again.
Corpse.
Nope. I didn't know whether to stick with the original Resident Evil or go with the remake. And in the end, I've settled on the remake because it was that darn good. Resident Evil, the game's plot, my dear. Have you heard it? What do you know about it?
Jill sandwiches?
There is Jill sandwiches for everyone. The game's plot follows Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, members of an elite task force known as
Stars.
STARS. Look at you.
I know because you have a mug.
As they investigate the outskirts of Raccoon City following the disappearance of their team members. They soon become trapped in a mansion infested with zombies and other monsters. The player, having selected to play as Chris or Jill at the start of the game, must explore the mansion to uncover its secrets. Does
That
it
would suck.
sound like a good concept? Not something that you would play, but what do you think of it as a creative mind like yourself? You like a good story?
Look, I don't like playing these games, but I could write them. I could write scary things. And as far as the structure goes, it's an interesting premise, and having those that work in intelligence and stuff getting caught up in a scheme so much bigger and creepier than they ever imagined is a good place to start. And I like that, you know, considering when that game came out, you had that option of playing as a guy or a girl.
And
that
two very different campaigns too.
Yeah. So you have to play as both to get the most out of that game. So there's a lot to respect there. Even if I don't enjoy the horror genre, I can still respect that format and the story that they're telling in it.
Now, the reason I settled on the remake is that it took the experience that people knew from the original and twisted their expectations on certain scenes. There's a very early scene in the very first Resident Evil. Down a corridor, there's windows, and you go through, nothing happens, but on the return trip, dogs jump through the window and scare the absolute life out of you. It's one of the most famous jump scares in video game history. Now, when you play the remake, if you have Resident Evil experience, you know what's going to happen. So you're like, I'm not falling for this again. So you go through, sure enough, you do your puzzles, you get your objects, you come back through the same corridor, you're waiting for it.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Okay. The next time you end up having to go through there for something, the window just cracks a little, but doesn't actually break, which puts you're thinking, it's coming, I know it's coming. I know it's going to jump out at me. And then it still doesn't happen. So they go, gotcha.
I like it. That's clever, messing with people, especially like if you're so familiar with it, to make sure that people are still having like a fresh experience coming back to a game.
Yeah, it's a game I played heaps on the GameCube. I played heaps. I got the Platinum Trophy on the PS4 version, which involves like 5, 6, 7 different runs through the game. I also like the fact they introduced a few new characters that fit in within the existing lore of the story they'd already told throughout the first 4 or 5 games. One of my favourite things about the first Resident Evil game is that you basically clear the mansion, but there's still some locked doors. And you end up going out the back towards a guardhouse, a little separate little building. You do some stuff there, you get the key. You're like, excellent, that opens the doors I needed to open. You come back in, and instead of zombies in the house, there's now much, much worse things. And you left feeling incredibly confident in your skills, and you come back running for your life.
Yay!
Good stuff. I did say I was going to try and keep each series with only one representative, but Resident Evil has 2 very different gameplay styles, so I figured I'd pick one more modern game and one of the classic style of games.
Yokai.
Number 4, Spooky 4. Woo.
Did you know 4 is an unlucky number in Japan?
Really?
Yep, it's kind of treated like 13 is here in Western society. You won't see it in hotel floors, on elevators a lot of the time. That's why when you actually say the word, they've changed the word that you use to say 4, because you've got ichi-ni-san, yon. But yon is the word that they use to say 4 to replace shi, which is the word for death. Ooh.
Let's just replace a letter of, like, let's just replace the name of one of our numbers.
Yeah, well, it's not just one, they do it with 2. So I think
7 is shi-chi, so that would be 1.
But number 9 is actually considered quite bad luck too. So if you see those 2 numbers
Is there
together,
any numbers
that's really
you can
bad.
actually use?
So if you see the number 49, it's like double bad luck.
Oh, goodness.
So there you go.
I'll keep that
Things
in
we've
mind.
learned in Japan.
Well, now I don't want to say number 4.
No, it's appropriate because it's Halloween.
Have you heard of a game called Until Dawn?
No, I don't think I've ever heard of
No,
that
I
game.
think you have. Let's not tell fibs.
Yes.
What do you know about it?
It had Hayden, who people may know from Heroes as the cheerleader that had Wolverine powers, and aka super healing. So she's one of the main actors, one of the main cast. It was motion captured, and it has basically every horror trope ever.
Which is exactly why we love it. Until Dawn is basically like playing a stereotypical horror movie. And that is what is perfect about it. It plays perfectly into that.
Yeah.
And 100%, if you are a fan of horror games, if you're a fan of horror movies,
Yeah.
definitely play Until Dawn. Play it with friends if you want to get together. But either way, make sure you play it. It's set in Western Canada. Until Dawn centers around a group of 8 teenagers who decide to have a holiday for a night in a cabin on the fictional Blackwood Mountain.
Idiots.
Exactly 1 year after the disappearance of 2 girls, the twin sisters of a member of the group. Shortly after arriving, the gang find themselves under attack by a madman and must attempt to survive until Sunrise.
Until dawn.
Until sunrise, actually.
Until dawn.
No, sunrise is what I said. Very different. The game is not called Until Sunrise. So you think that having a holiday on a night in a cabin in the woods on the anniversary of the disappearance of some girls at the same cabin is a bad idea?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Why would you go back to a place where people disappeared with, at night without police and...
Oh, reception terrible up there, trust me. You wouldn't be able to get a signal.
It's just, there's so many dumb things. And it's like, you're kind of like going, well, you deserve to die. Like, just don't be stupid. Seriously.
Now, you have plenty of experience with David Cage games.
Mm-hmm.
Quantic
and frankly,
Dream.
Seriously, some David Cage games could technically fall into this category. Heavy Rain.
No, not a horror game.
That's debatable.
Well, if you could want to argue that anything that makes you feel tense is a horror game, then Catherine
that's
is a
not-
horror game.
Let's okay. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. So David Cage, Heavy Rain. There are some creepy bits there.
Yes.
There are some gory bits. Yes.
Yeah.
Horrible ways to die.
Mm.
People locking you up in their basement, wanting to perform experiments on you.
Completely optional.
Well, it's it happened to my
You can't
character.
avoid it.
I know.
Just because you accepted something you shouldn't have.
There are a lot of horror elements to that story. So it's kind of a hybrid, in my opinion.
Okay.
And especially when they launched the DLC prequel of Madison, that whole thing is a horror game.
Oh, I'll
with
give
its,
you that.
With its taxidermy. Oh my goodness, nightmares.
Did that one stick with you?
Okay, can we end this topic?
No, we still got 3 more to go after this. Until Dawn I absolutely loved, and I loved watching my younger sister squirm her way through it. That was one of my first experiences with the game, and that is why it has such a fond place in my heart, because when she gets nervous, it's very entertaining.
Yes.
She had, out of the 8, how many do you think survived the journey?
1.
Correct. Nice work. Out of the 8 people, 1 character survived, and she was distraught because after her last experience of playing Heavy Rain, where she had a total of 0 survive, that she then played Until Dawn and had 1 survive. So she's not faring too well at these things.
See, look, you drew a parallel to Heavy Rain again, so you're just validating my points.
Style of gameplay does not reflect style of genre.
I think it's a mixed genre.
I do not think so.
I think so.
No.
Agree to disagree.
No. There's no disagreeing. It's all agreeing with me, because I'm correct.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaming Lovers.
Number 3 is a game series that I am surprised ended up so far down this list. Because I've always thought, when I think horror games, I think my favourite experience playing a horror game, and the one that thematically stuck with me and was just a swell of emotions as I played through it, was Silent Hill. In particular, Silent Hill 2. But when I put my list together, I realised there was 2 experiences that I enjoyed more than my time with Silent Hill 2. Fascinating.
All right, so tell us more about Silent Hill, which I believe is the game that has songs sung by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn.
You know it. Now, Jem loves the voice acting industry. I love the voice acting industry, but I also love the sweet, sweet sounds of Mary Elizabeth McGlynn's vocals on the Silent Hill soundtracks. Now, what we didn't realise was that she was actually a voice director and a voice actor. So that was quite a surprise when I found out that the lady that I love to listen to was actually directing things.
Mm-hmm.
Very
She's a
cool.
talented woman.
Very, very cool. Silent Hill, I love all of them. I love even the bad ones. It's one of those series that, like Sonic, it has its ups and it has its downs. But myself and the Falcon, we have many good memories playing Silent Hill. We love the characters, we love the stories, we love the weirdness, we love the spookiness, we love the slime, we love the rust, we love the blood. And why wouldn't you? Silent Hill 2 centres on James Sunderland, who enters the town after receiving a letter apparently written by his deceased wife, saying that she's waiting for him in Silent Hill.
If I ever die, Or, you know what, I'm going to include with my will packet if you're still alive. No.
Oh my gosh. This is disastrous.
That says, meet me entirely down.
Make sure it gets delivered 3 years after you die.
Okay, I'll have that. I'll put that and make sure the executor, whoever.
I'll be waiting for you in our secret place at Silent Hill. I'll be like, well.
Your middle name is James.
James is joined by Maria, who strongly resembles his dead wife as he searches for her and discovers the truth about her death.
Dun dun dun.
Very cool, very confusing. Silent Hill games, usually you have no idea what's going on. You don't understand the relevance of why these characters you keep bumping into. They seem to be just not important at all, really. But it's a very deep and sort of... It's not a easy to digest story. You have to do the digging. You have to do research on the characters. You have to learn. You have to piece it all together. It doesn't spell it out for you. And boy howdy, when you get to a certain point in that game, you think, wow.
You love saying boy howdy.
Boy howdy. It's just a friendly term of expression. So boy howdy.
I know how much you love Silent Hill, so what on earth bumped it from the top 2 spots?
Well, let's find out, shall we? One game that I actually played earlier this year, I believe. The Evil Within 2. A game that scared the life out of me. I'm sure I lost 5 years off my life, but it was phenomenal. It took a game that was made by the director of Resident Evil, Shinji Mikami, and let him have his new project. And The Evil Within 1 was sort of point A to point B. Get through this area, solve this, get past these enemies, next area, next area, next area. It had its story, sure, but The Evil Within 2 went open world. And I thought, that's ridiculous. An open world survival horror game. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There's nothing more scary than every house, basically, you're like, okay, what's inside this house? No, there's sounds coming from inside of it. Should I go in? Yes, I'll go in. Okay, now I've triggered a ghost lady that's going to follow me around the rest of the game. Why did I stick my head in that house? Why?
It's like me the first time playing Fallout. Which isn't typically a horror game, but it has a lot of jump scares. So, and sometimes there are houses you can go into, you've got to fetch something, but there'll be mutants or something else that pops up that just scares the daylights out of you.
So you're saying that a game that has scary elements is not a horror game?
I'm saying that there are aspects of it that are definitely horror-esque.
Yeah, but
You've
just trying to make you agree with your own point before.
No, if anything, I'd be like, no, there are moments where it feels very creepy. You've got bags of human remains hanging in like a super mutant's lair, and
Delicious.
there is a lot that could be said. Like, I mean, there's adventure elements, but there's certainly a lot of horror elements to that too. So, and like horror survival elements. Anyway.
Well, The Evil Within 2, 3 years after the first game's murder investigation goes wrong, ex-cop Sebastian Castellanos is forcibly recruited into a mysterious organization called Mobius. And his
Mobius Designs?
What's Mobius Designs?
How I Met Your Mother?
See, I hear Mobius and I always think of the classic Sonic the Hedgehog comics. The planet they lived on was called Planet Mobius. So that's what it always brings to
Because it's Ted Mosby. That's what he calls his business, Mobius Designs.
Terrible.
Sorry.
Anyway, he's thrust back into the STEM world, which is an alternate reality where once again people have begun turning into monsters. Imagine a neural network you could all plug into and you could all have your own little fantasy house in this little lovely peaceful town, which is in Brain World. And then it gets corrupted. And you have to go in there to stop it from destabilizing.
Fallout 3.
There's a couple of things that remind me of that, but it's very cool, and the game is incredible, and it's one of my favorite games that I've played full stop in the past couple of years. Probably like my top 5 recent games that I've played.
All right, what's number 1 then?
Well, let's build no suspense now. At this point, there's probably some games that you're thinking of that you're like, well, surely this has got to be in the list, so it's got to be number 1. Let me, before I reveal what number 1 is, say that the other 3 games, I'm going to cut them into the story here, because games that I have yet to play, which no doubt deserve to be on this list, include such things as Alien Isolation, where if you've seen how deadly the aliens are in the Alien movies, you'll know that if you're in one of those games with very little defensive capabilities and it's stalking you through a spaceship, how would that make you feel?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. I also am planning on playing with the Falcon Soma on my next session with him, which unfortunately has not happened yet. I really wanted that to happen before we flew away to Japan, but, well, schedules don't line up that well. I work trains with weird hours. He works on the docks with weird hours. And, boy, I'm glad we're not trying to,
Boy,
catch up.
howdy.
Boy, howdy. Stop it. I don't realise I say these things so much until you point them out and it's been recorded.
I'm sorry, love. So,
I won't
Soma,
deny.
what's Soma about?
Soma is set, to be honest, I know very little about it, but it is another one of those games where I don't believe you can fight back. You're on a underwater?
Ugh, I hate water levels so much. Like my least favorite type of level in any video game.
That's why BioShock was so scary when you first start that. You get the whole wonder of seeing the wonder of the underwater city, which is awesome, and then you land in it and the lights fail and you're like, I'm underwater. This is a terrible place to be trapped. But yes, Somas take place in an underwater remote research facility with machinery that begins to take on human characteristics. Sound like a good vacation spot?
Hi, Hal.
Yeah, we're planning on playing that very soon. And the number one game that I'm yet to play, this is not my number one horror game, that's coming up immediately after this. The number one game that I am yet to play that I really want to is Resident Evil 7.
The VR one?
The reason exactly why I have not played it is that I was considering attempting to play it all in VR for this Halloween.
Can we record you?
But it
doing
did not happen, like I said. It was going to be a podcast directly about that. Hasn't happened yet. Maybe I'll do it when we get back. But I didn't want to play it without trying it in VR first. Now, if I tried in VR, because I played the demo just normal on my TV, which still put me on edge, even though almost nothing happens in the demo. You see a glimpse of like one person go past a door, and that was enough for me, thanks. So I thought, my goodness, imagine trying to play this in VR. So I decided to wait and see if I could try it. If there's physical reasons I cannot, if it makes me nauseous or if my eyes struggle to focus, so on and so forth, I will abandon it. But I wanted to see if I could play it in VR. The Falcon played it. He said it was pretty darn scary. But he downloaded it digitally, so I couldn't borrow it off him because that's annoying when your friends do things like that. But number one of my spooky games. And before we get to the number one, I want to say an honourable mention to PT, which not many people can play anymore.
Yes, unless you kept it on your console when it first came out. Those poor suckers who deleted it hoping that they could download it again later. Well, unfortunately, Konami went all over that.
PT was a surprise release trailer, a playable trailer.
One of the few, probably the only one I've played on this list that you've mentioned.
I'm glad you can finally have your input. Why don't you explain PT and how it made you feel?
The never-ending corridor of PT, of creepiness, definitely worse with headphones on. So it's a pretty simple concept, but I think the exciting part was everyone knowing that Kojima was the brainchild behind this, and we knew that there would be lots of hidden clues. So what seemed very simple at first, as you walk through this corridor and as soon as you open the door, you're back at the start again, that there might be new things to look out for.
Every time you go through that loop, something is different. You have to trigger something different to get into the next loop.
Yes.
And there is just certain moments in that make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up because you've gone through, the radio's playing every time you go through, and then the one time you're looking for, all right, what's different this time? What am I supposed to do? And the radio says to you, don't turn around. And you're like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's what's different. Do I do it? It's terrifying.
It's so simple, but in its simplicity, it's what makes it brilliant. And I don't think I got to the end, because I know once you trigger everything, that's when you get the ultimate jump scare. So I think I got to a certain part, and as soon as I met the fetus in the bathroom, I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. Thank you. That was creepy enough for me.
That
like-
fetus had wonderful character development. You missed out.
It's a really tragic story, and it's so interestingly told, and you've got to be, good at paying attention to detail. But yeah, I'm really sad because obviously that was supposed to be leading up to
A Silent Hill game directed by Hideo Kojima. Could Brendo want anything more than that?
I know that could have been easily the best horror game ever, had that actually followed through.
Just imagine Kojima applying his twisted mind to the Silent Hill universe. My goodness, what could have been.
I mean, even in PT alone, people wanted to give it awards, and it was a demo. It wasn't even
won
a real
awards.
game. There you go.
It won awards, and it was a playable trailer.
Yes. So, things that could have been in an alternate universe. I'm happy. I wonder if Death Stranding is gonna be part of that genre, or if it's just in his own bubble of weird.
It's hard to tell if that's just going to be one of those situations where he's just doing it to entertain himself, and it's just no one else is going to make any sense of when they play it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Finally, what is your number one?
Well, I had to keep you in suspense because that's the whole point of horror, is that you build up the suspense, although horror sometimes is a bit of a misnomer. Most of these games fall into the terror category. Horror is more when you've seen gruesome things and you can't get them out of your head. Terror is when the tension gets built. And that's what I like. I like terror more than horror, but they're known as horror games. The number one horror game for Brendo of the Gaming Lovers, I give that award to Outlast. A game that is exquisite in its setting, because it's set in a madhouse. What
Yes.
better setting could there be? Let me just paint the picture for you. Outlast revolves around a freelance investigative journalist, Miles Upshur, who decides to investigate a remote psychiatric hospital called Mount Massive Asylum, located deep in the mountains of Lake County, Colorado.
No, I think he was checking himself in. Because he's crazy.
Now, Outlast is another one of those first-person horror games where you cannot fight back. It's evasion or nothing, or death.
It's all about timing.
You can hide in lockers, you can hide under beds, you can hide under desks, and whoever's chasing you, if you've broken line of sight, it's all good. When you're running from whoever's chasing you, you can hold a shoulder button and look over your shoulder while you're running forward. That's not in a lot of games, which adds to the realism. Now, what makes this go above and beyond is that you have a video camera with you to record this because you're a journalist. You've heard there's misdeeds and people being tortured or experimented on. You want to get to the bottom of it. Of course, you're going to bring a video camera. That video camera has good old night vision. Excellent. I can see in the dark, she says. Unfortunately, it's a twofold curse to that one benefit. The batteries are limited and do run out, and if they get low, it flickers off, so you can't see a thing. And secondly, although you can see in the dark, it does limit your long-range vision, which means you could be walking straight into a corridor where there's a guy, and you can't see him, but if you had it turned off your night vision, you could see him. Tricksy. Now, this game was phenomenal in its core experience. It also has a DLC called Whistleblower and a trophy in that called Bowel Whistler, which is an anagram of whistleblower. And what made these exceptionally great for my experience is that I achieved the unachievable. My rarest trophy on my entire PlayStation profile is from beating those two experiences on Lunatic difficulty, which is basically a one-hit kill. Your batteries run out faster than a regretful bride at a wedding, and you can only hold 2 batteries at a time. So between those things... Oh, and did I mention, no saving. You have to go start to finish, one-hit kills with very limited resources. Boy, howdy. There you go. It's my required one for each one in this list.
Yes.
I achieved it, and they are my rarest trophies and my proudest gaming achievement, one might say. I achieved it.
Well done.
And they are scary games. Recently, I decided to make one of our young teenage friends play it because they were brash. They have been nagging me since they were 13. Hey, I'm going to play a horror game with you when I turn 15 because the rating system in Australia, a lot of these horror games are in the MA 15 plus category, which means you must be 15 to play them.
Yeah, we have our rated classification now, but they never use it. Baffles me that they've added this finally, and then they still make everything like MA. It's like they're too scared to use the R rating.
So yeah, she was very confident that she could handle anything that I threw her way, so I decided, well, why not give her a little sample of what shouldn't scar her too much. My favourite horror game, Outlast. Have a listen.
Oh, I can hear creaking. Oh, there's wind. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's not even funny. I'm not even doing that. No. Do I have to?
It's either that or the guy in the toilet.
What?
Get in the vent. Get in the vent.
Why? Why are you saying it so urgently? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's not even funny. Not even funny. Why is that people talking?
Now, obviously, you can't hear the game itself because she was wearing headphones, but it's still amusing to listen to her freak out.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things, I can watch someone else play a horror game like that, and I'm fine because I'm not the one playing it. But also the sound was cut off, so I can't hear all the things that she can hear in her cans, you know? So it's like amusing. But if I had been in her spot, I would be...
Would you like to be?
No, thank you.
As an experiment for this podcast, which of those games would you play if you had to pick one?
Corpse Party.
No.
We've only just begun.
Keep that up and the podcast is going to be over right here, right now, madam.
Yeah, there's a word for what we're going to have. And that word is goodbye. We're going to go eat some ramen. Like...
That is enough of that song. You're going to chase all of our remaining fans away. That is the end of this episode of the Gaming Lovers podcast, the spooky Halloween episode. I do kind of have sadness that I can't play spooky games on Halloween while we're away, but living in a foreign country for a few days, not knowing the language, we're going to have some scary experiences anyway, I'm sure.
Well, let's go find some real-life Yakuza then, because then you can get some real thrills, eh?
No, I'd rather not. Again, I don't want to do things that will risk my life.
If you want to see, again, what we're up to while we're in Japan, check out our social media pages. You can find all the links at our website at thegaminglovers.com. Bayonara.
And sayonara.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.